Hi, I'm Billy Goodnick, local landscape architect and your host of GardenWise, which is where all the groovy people come to learn more about sustainable landscaping. If you've been watching the show since the early days, I think it was like the late 1800s, it started out as GardenWise Guys, and as the title would imply, it was a little bit of a silly show. Owen Dell, another local landscape architect, and I would do spoofs of different TV and movie genres, the occasional pie in the face, but there was also some good information there. Well, Owen and I got back together via Zoom to review one of our favorite episodes. It's called Design on a Deadline. It's a detective noir sort of spoof. There's some mysterious stuff going on, and also a little bit of foul play. Foul play, I said foul play, with a rubber chicken. So stay tuned. And, well, one more thing. The takeaway from this is if there's plants that you like and they're not appropriate here in Santa Barbara, there's always a way to swap them out. So stay tuned, have some fun.
Hey, Billy.
Owen, how the heck are you? I haven't seen you in ages.
Hey, do we love Zoom or what? This is so great.
Yes, this is one of the benefits of technology.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing okay, feeling good. I'm still doing the show.
Yeah.
Without you, I miss having you around, but we're still holding on there. What are you doing?
Still landscape architecting up here. You know, I moved to Corvallis 10 years ago, and I love it here.
Corvallis, that's like way up north, Oregon, or yeah.
Way up north, frozen north, 45th
Frozen north.
parallel. We're halfway between the equator and the North Pole. Yeah, so Billy, listen, I didn't just call to say hi. I also wanted to tell you, how much I miss you guys and the show. It was so much fun. I was looking at Design on a Deadline the other day. You remember that episode?
Yes. Yeah, well, the shows were all about spoofing other styles. So yeah, it was like a 1940s detective thing. Okay, I'm going to find it here. Let's watch a clip. GardenWise Guys, yeah. So we're in our office late at night. The phone rings with a mysterious voice on the other end of the line. Suddenly, a ransom note slides under the door. Owen retrieves the note. Reading the note, it turns out that a mysterious Mr. X has duck-napped our pet, Gertrude. We have until midnight to design a landscape for Mr. X, or Gertrude ends up breaded and deep-fried. Shaken, we duck into Joe's Cafe to review the info we got from Mr. X, but Mr. X's examples aren't sustainable in Santa Barbara gardens. Too much water. So we decide to swap his thirsty plants for better ones that serve the same need. Christy, who's with the City TV staff, plays the femme fatale working for Mr. X and slips something into our drinks. Unaware, we drink a toast to sustainable landscapes and promptly pass out. We were disappointed to find that we were not nominated for Oscars for this dramatic effort. Next thing you know, we find ourselves in Mr. X's new home. Madcap measuring ensues, and Owen and I strive for the sophistication of the Three Stooges. Again, an Oscar snub. Back at the office, we develop a planting layout and refine the plant palette to be more Santa Barbara friendly. We meet Mr. X in a freezing cold dark alley, and we explain the plan and the plant swap to him. He's in a hurry so he can get cosmetic surgery on that rippling nose of his. And at this point, we leave you in suspense. Okay, well, that was a little bit silly, and it may not be completely clear, but yeah, that was a whole lot of fun.
Well, it was fun, but I'm not sure that it really gave viewers the concrete idea of swapping out plants. Maybe we should try a little harder and do something that gets concrete about it. I don't know.
Okay, let's get serious.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Name That Plant Show, where two lucky contestants will vie for the title of amazingly brilliant, fabulously funny champion plant expert of the millennia. Now, our two experts will dare each other by producing a locally inappropriate plant and having their challengers suggest some better ones. Now, here's a hint. California natives might be a good starting point. Our participants today are none other than the original GardenWise guys, Billy Goodnick and Owen Dell. Gentlemen, start your engines and let's get going. And here we go. Round one, small trees. The star players in any garden.
Okay, I've got one here. This is a tree that does great up here in Oregon, but it doesn't do well in Santa Barbara at all. Japanese maple. Japanese maple needs water. It needs cool temperatures. It's perfect for Western Oregon. In fact, there's actually a municipal ordinance that you have to have a Japanese maple in your front yard in Corvallis.
No, there isn't. You're
No, there
kidding
isn't.
me.
I was
No,
joking.
okay.
But look, Japanese maple. What do you got?
Japanese maple. I love maple. California pancake and maple tree.
What?
No, okay.
Oh,
No,
come on.
seriously. My top one for a beautiful small tree, looks great through all different seasons, is the Western redbud, the Cercis occidentalis. Small tree, it's got beautiful pink flowers before the leaves come out, beautiful heart-shaped leaves, real low water using, grows all around here. So, 1 point. I got it. Not a native, but pineapple guava. I love the fruit. It's a beautiful kind of grayish leaf, very low water. It's got kind of a reddish, almost coffee-colored bark to it. Oh, and the petals. You can eat the petals. They're beautiful, like a little, the little petals. Speaking of fruit, strawberry tree, which isn't real strawberries, you know this one, but also a tree with really nice character. Very low water using, Mediterranean plant. What do you think?
Good job. I got it.
Okay, that's 3 for me.
Round two, screening shrubs, so you won't have to look at your neighbors in their birthday suits.
Inappropriate screening shrub. You know, everybody loves hibiscus, but between the whitefly they had, I mean, they're really they're like a Hawaiian tree, so that you know how much water they need. So do something with that. What about hibiscus as a tall screening shrub?
Yeah, too bad we lost those, but good riddance, I guess. Listen, let me think about this. Well, the first thing that comes to mind would be a native hollyleaf cherry. Big, beautiful, green, evergreen, just nice, easy plant. It doesn't have as showy a flower, but it's a good plant, and it won't give you any trouble. Actually, another native, and you talked about strawberry trees. How about lemonade berry? Doesn't make lemonade, but it's a great shrub and very, very adapted. It's local. You see it on the cliffs. I'm
good with that.
Santa Barbara. So that would be good. What else? Let's see. Hopseed, the hopseed bush. Great plant. Doesn't make hops for beer. So plants that don't make strawberries and don't make tea, don't make, et cetera.
Yeah.
So hopseed. Yeah. So hollyleaf cherry, lemonade berry, and hopseed bush. How about that?
3 points for you. We're going neck and neck.
All right.
Round three, accent plants, grasses and perennials.
How about silvergrass or miscanthus?
So,
Beautiful grass, but thirsty.
yeah.
Since I bet you can do better than that. What do you got?
Well, first thing that comes to mind right away is deergrass, Muhlenbergia rigens, just about the same size as a lot of those. The foliage gets up, waist high, chest high, and then when it gets those flowers moving in the breeze, just gorgeous. So that would be my top pick. A few others, depends how much space you have. There's the silvery colored Canyon Prince ryegrass,
I love
Lamus. Really nice stuff, tends to spread a little bit, but it's that beautiful stiff silvery leaf, really brightens up a garden. Another one that's not a native but is my absolute go-to for a grassy effect is Lomandra, and there's a variety called Breeze that's got kind of a yellowish green foliage, so it really pops. A little bit smaller, gets about 3 feet high, 3 feet across, whatever. Booyah.
Thing too. I love that plant because it takes sunshade, drought, water.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
I think
We got one more round. Got one more round, man. Get some points.
I got to beat you.
Okay.
All right.
Round four, ground covers for a feeling of openness.
Oh, this is obvious. One of the more wasteful, we're trying to get rid of it, only use it if you absolutely have to, ground covers. A grass lawn, marathon fescue, that sort of thing. Lots of water, all the mowing, that sort of thing. But here's your challenge. It's got to be able to take some foot traffic, okay? Because it's taking the place of a lawn. What you got?
Oh, piece of cake. Chicken sandwich. No, sorry.
Well,
We're talking plants, sorry.
You can walk on a chicken sandwich.
Yeah, but you can't eat it afterwards. Well, I mean, you could.
That's true. Once you've stepped
But
on it.
anyway, I'm sorry. I digress. Let's get back to the plants here. I know one that comes to mind right away, and I love this plant, and I use it up here a lot. But it's also good in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
And it's sedge called Carex chisai.
Chisai.
Discovered by a nurseryman in Santa Barbara, Carpinteria, actually, friend of mine, friend of yours too.
Yeah.
It's a dwarf version of something that I used a lot until this chisai came out. By the way, chisai means tiny in Japanese.
Wonderful.
It's evergreen. It's beautiful. It gets about 6 inches high. It's super easy to grow. I actually took out my lawn here at home, and I put in a Carex chisai lawn. Absolutely gorgeous. I really love it. So that's,
and you can mow it too, can't you?
you can mow it, but
Yeah.
you don't have to mow it.
Right.
That's the cool
Perfect.
thing about it. Takes about
Okay.
half the water of a lawn and doesn't need fertilizer, doesn't really need much of anything. So that's one. What else?
Good.
Let's see. Well, Lipia is a good plant. It's easy, it's sturdy. It's kind of a no-nonsense plant, and I think it takes foot traffic and
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
In
What
fact, we did a whole segment on that in one of our more recent shows, so people could go back and look at the one on Lipia, and it's also called Carapia.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, I know. Here, that's another favorite of mine, yarrow. I mean, yarrow is a classic meadow lawn substitute. It has beautiful flowers. They come in all different colors.
That's right.
They are an attractant to pollinators, and you can let it bloom, and it gets up about, I don't know, a foot high, 18
Yeah.
inches high, and then you can cut it back to the ground, and it has this beautiful feathery foliage. It's super drought tolerant. It's totally easy. Really one of the best things for a lawn substitute. So there you go. There's three. We're
Okay,
next.
and the other thing with the yarrow is it tastes like chicken salad, which a lot of people haven't tried that. So yeah, you get the best of both. So, Mr. Announcer Guy, what's the score?
Well done, gentlemen. Yes, it's a tie, 6-6. Garden Wise guys, you clearly have not lost your touch. But since it's a tie, we won't be giving away our Ferrari Testarossa built in 1957 and valued at over $200,000.
As I would have expected, we're an even match, Owen. So points for you, points for me. I think the main thing is we made the point that you can keep the style of garden that you want, swap out plants, and have something much more appropriate to our climate.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
What's that?
Just a minute.
Gertrude!
Oh, yeah. It's Gertrude. You know, I just want to tell you, we've been together in Oregon now for 10 years, and she's doing great. She loves it up here. She had a couple of years of therapy after that show because of the traumas
Oh,
involved.
yeah, the kidnapping.
But she's doing really well. So I just
Cool,
wanted
cool.
to let you know that.
Well, you know what? If you remember, I got one of her eggs and it hatched beautifully. This is Gertrude's daughter, Gertrude 2. And she like a little kiss from mommy. Bring it in, bring it in. Oh, isn't that sweet? She misses her mommy.
Hey, Billy, this has been a great phone call.
This was great.
So many memories. I really miss seeing you. I miss seeing everybody. Like Christy, for example. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could just see her and say hi? That would be really.
Yeah, I mean, that was her acting debut. What do you know? It's Christy.
Hey boys, how about a drink?
Oh, wonderful. Drinks on the house. See, I told you that would be fun. For more information on finding appropriate plants for you to swap out, go to waterwisesb.org, click on landscape, and look for Find the Perfect Plant. You'll find all sorts of wonderful stuff to work with there. So next up, in our continuing series of introducing you to landscape designers on the chance that maybe you could use one on your team, I'm going to take you to a home designed by somebody I've been very close with for years and years. I hope you'll enjoy it. Hi, this is one of my favorite segments of the show where I get to introduce you to a colleague or another designer. And the idea here is to at least get you thinking about maybe working with a professional designer. Not every project needs it. There's plenty of DIY stuff out there, projects where you're just swapping out a few plants. But if you're looking at something major, it might be useful to have at least a few hours of a professional's help. And for that, I'm turning to a colleague of mine, somebody I've known, God, for years. Want to introduce you to Billy Goodnick. Hey, Billy, thanks for having me on the show. Really been looking forward to an opportunity to show off my work. Tony, I don't think this is going to work. This is just kind of silly. So let's figure out another way to do this. Okay, as you know, this show is all about rethinking our gardens, making them more sustainable, and certainly saving water. So let's picture a scenario where you've either let your lawn go completely, it's time to move on, make some changes, or you're on the cusp of getting rid of your lawn. In order to do that, we need to think really big because things are changing. So there's three basic cornerstones I include in my designs. The first is, as you might assume, we want the garden to be beautiful. I've rarely had a client say, Billy, my garden's too pretty, I need to tone it down some. So beauty, we want it to be useful. When you go out the door, you want to be able to do something. It's just an extension of your home. It's more living spaces. And the big one is, well, not last in order of priority, but we want everything to be as sustainable as possible. We want to create gardens that don't have impacts on the environment, that use materials wisely, use resources wisely, and also saves you some time and some money on the maintenance end of things. So a little background on how I got to be where I am right now, other than this place, to be a landscape architect. Started life as a child, of course, very close to my mother at the time of my birth. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and the family moved out to California, LA area, when I was about 8. And at that point, my life was just about music. I still am a drummer. And when I was in LA going through school and all of that, music major, playing in recording studios, that sort of thing. And somehow I stumbled into the world of houseplants and bonsai, the little Japanese trained trees, and that kind of turned my life around. Ended up going back to school and studying horticulture, putting music behind me for a while, getting out and working in nurseries, doing landscape installations. But my real love, I started realizing, was design. So I went to school, got a 2-year degree in ornamental horticulture, emphasis on design, came out, kept working in the field, and eventually, in my 30s, I got frustrated with my lack of design chops, the lack of tools that I had. So I ended up going back to school in San Luis Obispo, getting my degree and really launching my career at that point. Worked in the San Francisco Bay Area for a while for a small company, and then, as luck would have it, I got an offer from City of Santa Barbara as city landscape architect and park planner. And that started in the late 80s and was a really great job while I still did a fair amount of landscape consultation, but small scale stuff. Come the economic turnaround around 2008, and I wasn't with the Parks Department anymore and started focusing more on landscape design. My specialty, and really all I do, is small scale residential design. While I was doing that, I also launched a career in writing, writing for blogs, national magazines and stuff, and teaching also, doing adult ed, teaching at Santa Barbara City College. And the reason I'm touching on that is because it's helped me understand my design process by having to explain it back to other people. So some real advantages in teaching. Anyway, I've been focusing on residential landscape design and occasionally putting down a funky drum beat with King Bee. Got to come hear us if we're still around. And that's kind of it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So a little bit about this project, but also how it applies to what you might do if you're designing your own garden. It starts with analyzing what you have to work with and thinking about where you want to go. So the analysis is the site analysis. What are the opportunities you have? What are the constraints? Think to yourself about what it is that's working really well and where it is that you might want to change some things. I think it all starts with functionality. A garden that doesn't serve your needs or act as more outdoor living space, I think you're missing something if you don't go that way. So I always start with my clients by interviewing them about what they would like to do when they go outside. In this case, this is a fairly small lot. It's only about 100 feet deep and about 60 feet wide. So quite a small canvas to paint on. But the needs for the family included kind of an outdoor relaxation area, a dining area, just some open space where a little bit of recreation could happen. And then we had to connect all those spaces to each other. So the four basic elements in a design, in the physical design, are going to be the space that you occupy, how you move from one area to another, the path system, whether things need screening, whether inside the site you want to not see another portion of the garden, or maybe something off-site, a view of a neighbor or something you just don't want to look at. And then the last thing is a focal point or two, something that just really stands out. It's like the exclamation point in a garden. It could be an object like a statue or a water fountain. It could be just a really nice specimen plant. Something I want to emphasize, if you're doing a project of this nature where you're creating some new spaces and there's going to be some construction or just rethinking how areas work, I think it's really important to do it graphically on paper. And you don't need a degree in drafting to at least just put your ideas on. This stuff isn't going to the Smithsonian or an art museum, so don't worry about it. So we've got an interview, I've got my photos, I've laid out a map of the site with just the basic information, not a whole lot of detail on it. And I need to check in with the client before I get too far along. So I do what I call my brain dump. Some designers call it a conceptual design. And all I'm doing is taking the very first thoughts, checking in with the client, making sure I'm on the right track before I get any further. So for example, there was a brick patio here when I first started out, and we were just going to leave it intact, partly just for budget. We wanted to have kind of a little lawn-like area and a dining area, and this is going to be where a fire pit's going to be portable. But at the same time we were doing that, we were also thinking about how does this garden affect the interior of the house, or the opposite is what does the garden look like from inside? Don't overlook that, because we probably spend more time in the house looking out than we do in the garden itself. So the heart of the project, just for family living and entertaining, is this little conversation area. We've got a love seat for 3 people or so, and a couple of extra chairs, fire pit. I've got some views back to the mountain, and I can see the rest of the garden from here. So initially on the drawing, this may just be a big circle that says conversation pit. I like to call it the chilaxitorium. It's an old Roman term. But understand it when you finally get down to the details. How much area does a love seat and a fire pit and a couple of chairs take up? You don't want to squeeze these things in. Give yourself enough space to make the area work. Another key element for outdoor living that you'll probably have as well as my client did is somewhere to sit down and eat and gather with people and be with family. This is a very, very small yard, and we're kind of shoehorning a lot of uses into it. So one of the things that worked best here was to turn the rest of the plan after the patio on a diagonal. It ends up with deeper corners, and you have more space from one end to the other to fit something in if you work something other than parallel and perpendicular. So the size of this dining room is all based on the size of the table that the client wanted. In this case, we've got sit down for 8. That's a pretty good size footprint, and room for a shade structure over it. Because it's such a small yard and everything feels kind of connected to each other, this may sound counterintuitive. I think a garden or an outdoor space feels or is perceived larger when it's broken up and certain elements are screened from the other. And to do that, we used a couple of these olive trees, which will be getting bigger, but we'll have to keep under control, and having the feeling of coming into a portal here. So by having this path come in off the main path that goes out to the standalone office, we were able to achieve this sense of being inside this space versus being outside this space. So think of this as kind of a gateway. You can do it with plant material, you could do it with a couple of posts, you could build a pretty white picket fence, but something that creates this sense of two different spaces, I think is very valuable, especially in a small garden, if you can make it work. One of the toughest things in redesigning an existing garden is figuring out what to keep and what to get rid of. It's a tough one. Some people just feel like, I don't want to kill any living thing, and I respect that too. And other people want to hang on to everything, and sometimes that's an obstacle. So kind of triaging what plants are important, what are already serving a good role, or maybe they're very productive fruit trees and you need to work around them, that's going to drive the design as well. But I always tell my clients, unless your great-great-grandmother carried this lilac over Donner Pass and it survived, don't get too nostalgic about your plants. Sometimes putting in a new, younger plant is actually going to catch up very quickly if you do everything right. So we've got this shade structure, and it's not all that dense in terms of topping on it. It casts a good amount of shade, but we want it to be even shadier in here. It's a very sunny area of the garden. So we're growing a vine on the trellis. One caveat, one caution about this is only going to be as successful as your horticultural success. So when people are trying to make a decision whether to put in a hedge or put in a fence or to use a vine or build a structure, think about how dependent that is on you successfully growing a plant. So we want some kind of hard as nails plant like this solanum, certain types of hedges that are really easy to grow. So choose your plant material wisely, make sure it'll do what you want, and then take good care of it because it is providing a functional feature to the garden. Another new favorite of mine is this sort of shrubby ground cover. Not a ground cover you can walk on, but this is a form of Westringia. This one's called Mundi, and it stays very low. It's got these beautiful gray-green leaves and the white flowers, and I just find it really sparkly. But one thing I want you to notice in this garden, there's only a few different species of plants, and they're used in groupings or clusters or masses. And I think that's one of the things that makes a landscape feel more calm, feel more put together, feel more cohesive, rather than the, I'm going to use every Crayola in the box and scatter them out. That's okay if that's your taste, but I prefer to work kind of broad brush, more like painting with a roller than painting with a brush. So that's this project. That's my segment, getting to show you a little bit of what I do. I hope you learned something, maybe got a little inspiration, a few ideas you can apply to your own garden. If you need to reach me, you can visit my website, billygoodnick.com, see some of my other work, and if you want to get in touch, there's some contact information there. That's it for this segment. Thanks for being here. Oh, wait a minute, I almost forgot. So rude of me, I almost forgot. I just want to thank me for having me on the show. It's really been a pleasure. Stay tuned for the next segment. Here, you want to try this? Just checking for trolls under the bridge. Beautiful place. I just want to thank me for giving me the time to interview myself or something like that. Next up we have Kathy Perret, and she's going to be giving us some great irrigation tips, helping you figure out why your water bill might be a little high. There's all these mysteries and myths. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Kathy Perret, City of Santa Barbara's Water Conservation. Today we're going to cover a couple of really common customer questions. We like to call this the water use Mythbusters. Myth number one, we were on vacation, no one was home. Our water bill should be much less. It's an interesting thought, but while you're on vacation, your irrigation isn't taking a break. You have to think about it as each individual in your house is using about 50 gallons a day. So that's 50 gallons a day per person for inside use. But if you think about your irrigation, pop-up sprinklers use on average 13 gallons per minute per zone for each day that it's watering. If you have drip irrigation, that uses on average 7 gallons per minute per zone that you're watering. So when you're not there, your irrigation is still watering. Let's do a little back of the envelope math. Say you have a small yard with grass. You water 3 times a week at 15 minutes each time. There's 2 zones of sprinklers to cover the grassy area. 15 minutes times 13 gallons per minute times the 2 zones will equal about 390 gallons of water for 1 day of watering. In the month, the grass area is using 4,680 gallons of water. You also have those 2 drip zones. Each of the drip zones runs 2 times a week for 40 minutes each. Estimate about 7 gallons a minute times 40 minutes per day for those 2 zones. And every day you run your drip zone, you're using 560 gallons. In a month, the drips use 2,200 gallons. So between the drips and the pop-up sprinklers, your landscape is using 6,880 gallons per month. That's over 9 billing units. For indoor usage for 2 people, you use about 3,000 gallons or 4 billing units. So depending on how long you're gone, you may not see any drop at all in your water bill. Most of the water used is irrigation usage. So if you go on vacation during the irrigation season, your monthly bill may be very similar to the months that you're actually there at home. You may go on vacation, but your irrigation system doesn't. Myth number 2, we had a leak, we had it repaired, but our bill is still high. Sometimes you have a leak and you have a repair done, but it's done partway through one billing period, and the next billing period has part of the leak and part of the not leak. But you can determine whether or not the leak has been completely repaired or if you still have a problem. You want to go to your meter and you're going to utilize the little blue snowflake. This little blue snowflake or leak indicator, that is the most important tool on your meter. If this is moving, and this is just a trickle, it's a really small leak that's making this move. You can use this as a tool to help you isolate where the leak is. You'll want to go up and shut the emergency shutoff at your house off. That'll shut off any potential leak inside. If you shut the house off and the blue dial stops and it's solid, that means you have an inside leak, probably a toilet, leaking faucet, something that maybe a water softener. If you shut off the house and it's still moving, then you best check your irrigation, because many times you'll have a really slow leak from a hose bib or an irrigation valve. But why is my bill still high? Well, your leak could have occurred halfway in a billing period. So when you get your bill, you see that it's higher than normal, but look at your calendar. When did you have the plumber out to fix it? You may have had half the month while the leak was actually occurring and half the month that it was repaired. So your bill will be a little bit higher, but it's going to go back to normal because you've checked your meter and you've confirmed that that leak's no longer occurring. Myth number 3, water use is a mystery, and leaks can't be found until you receive your bill. There are different ways that can assist you. We've got the old school method and we've got new technology. Let's start with old school. We're going to go out to the meter and take a look out there first. You can also use the leak indicator to help you determine where you have a leak. If you see the blue indicator is moving, you can shut off the house water to isolate a potential leak inside and see if the blue indicator stops. You can shut off your irrigation water and see if the irrigation stops. And that lets you know whether you have a potential inside water leak, maybe a toilet, or maybe you have an irrigation valve that's leaking or not shutting off completely. We're here to help you. We can help you with the old school technology, how to read your meter, how to calculate how much water you're using by actually taking a picture of the numbers on your meter before and after you say, run an irrigation zone. Then there's new technology. The 21st century brings in smartphone apps. It brings in devices that can hook directly into your water line. They let you know how much water you're using and can even send you leak alerts. With either technology, you'll know how much water you're using. It'll allow you to make those important decisions on your property, whether you want to buy that new high efficiency washer, or maybe cut down on the irrigation a little bit. Either way, knowing how much you're spending is basically creating a budget. You can save dollars and you can save water. To learn more, visit waterwisesb.org.
Thank you, Kathy. Always a fountain of knowledge. Notice the water-related pun there. For more information about saving water in your landscape as well as indoor use, and if you run a business, there's some great information there too. Go to waterwisesb.org and poke around a little bit. So if you've seen my shows in the past, there was a time when I did a segment called Crimes Against Horticulture, When Bad Taste Meets Power Tools. It's about all the hideous things people do, changing shrubs and things into boxes and barrels and very unnatural shapes. If you're after a natural shape in your garden and you have to keep a plant a little bit smaller, there's ways of pruning that keep that natural look. It's got a little something to do with a family of fairy tale bears, but stay tuned, you'll figure it out. Meantime, I have an appointment with destiny. No fragrance, but these are giant dahlias. They're fabulous plants. They grow up from the ground every year. You cut them all the way down. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about pruning, some of the do's and don'ts, and a technique that I like to call Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear. You might remember that from Goldilocks. We'll get onto that in a second. If there were a perfect plant or I were a genetic engineer, I would design a plant that grows exactly to the height that I want it to end at. It would grow no wider than the space that I have for it. Of course, it would flower in whatever color I felt like that day, smell wonderful, and on a good day, it might even drive down to the store and pick up some Ben & Jerry's for me. But that's not gonna happen. We work with the plants we've got. We always try to pull off a right plant, right place. The idea that I want a plant that meets all the criteria, the amount of sun, the amount of shade, etc. So, I'm standing next to a form of sage, and it's gonna be a real good vehicle for explaining what we're gonna do. So let me give you a couple of tips here. Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear. The longest branches or the longest stuff that we want to get rid of on the plant are the Papa Bears. The Mama Bears are at just the height that we want, and the Baby Bear are the little ones. So it's like too little, just right, and too much. The purpose of pruning is to try to, or this technique of pruning is to try to cut back to a spot deeper inside the plant than where you want it to end up. We're going deep inside the profile of the plant, finding a bud that has good potential. It's got flowers, it looks like it's going to grow, and cutting deeper down into the plant in order to start it over. So it's like, okay, you're done, you're starting over. Someday you'll be about midway here and perfect. And I'll always be regenerating new growth from the inside. And that's really a key point to keep a plant going forever. So let's imagine, because I don't have the perfect plant here right now, that this branch is even longer, that it's way out of the outline of this, like your bangs have gotten too long. So I want the plant to end up in about this profile. So I'm going to look for a candidate bud to cut back to. And some of these, because I'm going to do this in a few places on the plant every time I go through this cycle, some of these I may only cut back part way, and now they're starting closer to their mature height. Some of them I'm going to cut all the way back. These are the baby bears, and I'm going to cut back to here knowing that it's going to continue growing. It'll get to where I like it, and then someday it'll go a little beyond that. And then the next time I come back, I'm going to look for something else in this range and cut back to it again. So in fact, I'm not responsible for this, but obviously somebody at Alice Keck Park Memorial Garden knows what they're doing. This looks like a cut from maybe a year ago. There was a bud here. This bud grew out probably a year later, and then 2 new buds came out from that. So you can see how this plant is always wanting to replace itself and throw off new growth. So now I'm going to cut back here. I'm going to cut at a slight angle. That keeps water from building up here and starting rot. And on this next branch, maybe I'll cut here. So now I've got a tiny baby. And this neighboring branch, because this one's already pretty low, I'm going to cut here. Now I've got a slightly older sibling starting out. And somewhere else in the plant, I might cut back even deeper and start it over. So this is a type of pruning you do sporadically, and you'd like every few months maybe during the growing season, or maybe just once a year. But the idea is that you only cut back percentages of the plant at a time. Maybe a third of the plant or a quarter of the plant will get this type of pruning. So there's always the older ones, then there's some new stuff starting, but it's not the whole plant done at once. I'll walk around my garden with a set of pruners and just kind of see a few long ones, go deep inside, cut them off. I might be pruning 10% of the growth at any given session. So this is the mainstay of my arsenal. Felco, Corona are some of the top brands. Avoid the really cheap ones because they go out of alignment, the blades don't stay sharp, and they're not adjustable. I finally figured out after about 20 years the right way to adjust these things, and it keeps them great. The other thing is I always have a little sharpening stone just to clean them up a little bit and make sure I've got a good sharp blade. Cutting a sharp cut as opposed to breaking a branch or whatever is always superior, more likely to heal and create problems. So these are good depending on your hand strength. You can go through some pretty decent sized branches on perennials and some shrubs and things like that. If the going gets rough, you've got loppers, a lot more leverage. Same idea in terms of keeping them sharp. Keep your fingers and nose out of them. But these are for bigger branches, and they're small enough you can get inside a plant and work with them. You always want to cut fairly close to the growth point. For little things, because I do this same technique for my house plants, even a plant like Coleus or something like that, you might want little snippers like this, and these are my pride and joy. I've had these since 1970 something. These are my bonsai shears. I got my start in horticulture training trees for my own hobby. And when it really gets big, you might need a saw for some big cuts, but not so much for this technique. If you need anything bigger than this, please call a certified arborist. So let me stress that this is not a universal pruning technique for every plant, and we don't have time in this segment, and I probably don't know every plant that would respond to this, but after a while you get a little instinct. What we just looked at is a rather soft tissue, kind of what's called an herbaceous plant. It's not real woody. This is a woody plant. This is Cotoneaster, related to holly and those sorts of things, but the same basic principle applies here. We've got these overly long branches that need to be pruned back, and I could just say, well, I don't want you any bigger than this, and cut right here. If I do that, the next bud is going to start exactly where I cut it, and it's going to be out of line fairly quickly. So this is a case where I'll go deeper inside the plant, find some twigs or things that are obviously raring to grow again, and cut back to those. So here's a little nuance in terms of pruning. We want to cut back so that the last bud or the last new growth point is already aiming in the direction we want the plant to go. The character of this plant, Cotoneaster, is kind of up and arching. So if I prune to an upward facing branch or an upward facing twig, that's great, because this is now going to grow out and this way. If instead I prune to a side or a bottom bud, this new branch is going to come right out, and it's not the character I'm looking for in this plant. So I could either cut here And here's my new growth tip coming out this way. Or if I want to leave a little more, I can cut to here. Here's my new arch starting, and then cut again here because I have an upward facing twig. If I cut here, this down one's just going to fall or grow downward. So that's a good cut. It's going to take a little while, but this is going to grow up and out and create kind of a natural arc, which is the character of this plant. So always prune so that the last bit of growth is aiming where you want the plant to go. Pretty simple. So that's it on pruning. It's not a technique that works with everything, but I hope you found something in here that you can use in your own garden. I just found that I needed a new pair of gloves. These have kind of had it, so I'm off to the nursery, and see you next time. Well, I hope you learned something interesting, and I hope you weren't also expecting to see Goldilocks. She's off in the Bahamas somewhere. I just want to emphasize that that technique isn't absolutely universal, so start slow. Whatever shrubs or plants you're going to use this on, take a few clips, wait a while, make sure you get some new return growth. Then you won't hurt anything. Next up, you're going to learn that you don't have to travel to Vermont to get good fall color. Nathan Slack, who's the City of Santa Barbara's tree guy, is going to show us some of the beautiful opportunities we have here in Santa Barbara to get some really great fall color.
What tree is that? What tree is that? Ah, what tree is that? What tree is that?
Today we're out in the Hidden Valley neighborhood taking a look at some trees that give us really unique fall color here in Southern California. It's pretty uncommon to think fall color. I think when you think of Santa Barbara, specifically Southern California, we tend to be more in the subtropical zone. We have a few species that are pretty tried and true, pretty commonly planted in the landscape a lot of times for that fall color, and this neighborhood is a great example of them. The American sweet gum is commonly referred to as also liquid amber in Southern California, so they're synonymous with one another. Recognized common name would be American sweet gum. They've long been planted in Southern California for their fall color. They're one of the few species that will continually produce, at least on some level, burgundy, red, that sort of like really deep red color that we're used to seeing. Moving towards dormancy or going essentially to sleep for the winter, the leaves start to shut down production. A green leaf is full of chlorophyll, which is the pigment that causes all leaves to be green, and it's essential for photosynthesis where the tree's making its own energy. As the leaf starts to shut down, the chlorophyll starts to disappear, and these other pigments that are known as carotenoids, these are the oranges, they're responsible for, say, the orange in carrots, the yellow in corn. So when we talk fall color, the carotenoids are giving us the yellows, the browns, the oranges. Those are essentially the carotenoids. And then when we see these red, these burgundies, different hues of red, that pigment's known as anthocyanin. Specifically with sweet gums, you can always get some amount of really nice red, sort of burgundy fall color in the species. As the leaf continues to shut down, those also start to sort of wither away, and you'll start to see more of these oranges and yellows as the anthocyanins sort of fade from the leaves of the tree. So we've just walked around the block. Here in the background we have pretty classic, pretty fantastic example of Ginkgo biloba. Again, that's a botanical name. It's commonly referred to as ginkgo around here, also known as maidenhair tree. It's dated back to 170 million years ago by fossil record. It's essentially unchanged, no evolution within the species since that time, and came very, very close to going fully extinct. If it weren't for some Chinese monks propagating the species, it would be lost forever. Planted widely in Southern California, all through the Midwest. You can find it, all through its native area, native range in China, other places in Asia, and even in Europe now. So it's here to stay. Much different than the American sweet gum that we just looked at. Ginkgo's planted because it always has a very tried and true sort of dynamite yellow fall color. This is probably the best that we've seen it in years. Fall color tends to be dictated by length of day, And there's some other factors like moisture or temperature plays a small role, but essentially as the days become shorter and shorter, that's really the cue for the trees to recognize that it's time to start going dormant if they're a deciduous species. I think we've seen a really nice, more traditional fall this year, and I think most people that look around and pay attention to fall color can say that this is one of the best years that we've seen in the last at least 3 to 5 years, in my experience. And this is again another classic example of just the brilliant yellow fall color that the ginkgo can display. And this is the carotenoid pigment that's responsible for this like really dynamic yellow color in this species. So we've driven just down the street from the Hidden Valley neighborhood. We're over on Allen Road now, very close to the Arroyo Burro open space. The tree we're looking at in the back is commonly referred to as Chinese pistache. Its botanical name is Pistachia chinensis. As you can imagine, it's native to China, in large parts of Asia. Another tried and true fall color tree for Southern California. You can also find this tree planted prolifically in Northern California, sort of in the Bay Area, Palo Alto. It's been used for a long time up there. We're starting to see its use more frequently in Southern California. Big reason why is because oftentimes we get like this really vibrant red fall color, similar to the American sweet gum. I hope everyone's enjoyed a quick tour of 3 of my favorite reliable trees that provide consistently reliable fall color in the city of Santa Barbara. And I would encourage everybody to get out, as you're driving around or taking walks, try to find these trees, visit our parks. A lot of these species are present in a lot of the great city parks. And if there's ever questions, feel free to reach out to the Parks and Recreation Department, specifically the forestry program, and we'd be happy to provide some resources or tell you where to find these trees.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And oh my gosh, those ginkgo trees, they're just spectacular and they behave beautifully all over Santa Barbara. Well, that does it for this episode. I don't know if you've ever heard me say this before, but for more information on saving water and more sustainable gardening, go to waterwisesb.org. I'm Billy Goodnick. Tune in for the next one and stay waterwise, Santa Barbara County. I have to translate now for the ducks. We had a chicken, now we got a duck.